So if you go back to the beginning of history, let's say in this area, let's start with the archaic period, which is more or less 8th century BC. At that time, the old Knidos Palea, we call it, and probably there have been some settlements in the present-day Knidos, but not a big city at all. So the main settlement was in Burgaz area, facing Simi over there. And the stuff that were found in the area indicates that they were sort of mostly depending on exportation of wine and vinegar. This goes well into Hellenistic period, which is 4th century BC. If you look at, let's say, classical period, around 6th century BC, the most important event of that time is the meetings of the Hexapolis. 6 cities meeting around there. If you've been to Emejik, there's a temple of Apollo there. Probably Temple of Apollo had been the meeting place of these festivities, people sort of celebrating festivities coming from 6 cities, 3 from Rhodos, the other one Halikarnassos and Knidos. After a while, somehow it went down to 5 cities, and then probably they stopped when the city moved to Knidos. How did that happen? In the beginning of 4th century, until then, the agricultural area on the peninsula could support about 15 to 18,000 people. But then they started terracing, and that meant more grapes and more harvest, more yields. In a very short while, the number of population, the population that the peninsula supported, went up to 70 to 80,000. That's a very sharp increase. If you've been there, you must have seen the harbors. The first harbor, then the second harbor, then the third harbor, and the fourth one is pretty big, but still it wasn't enough, which shows the amount of exports were going up. And when you look at, let's say, Hellenistic period, Knidos together with Rhodes, when I say Rhodes or Rhodos, it's not just the island, because at that time all the land, way to Marmaris now, but in those days it was Physicus, was Rhodian land. So this area had been the main wine producer in the world, producing probably the biggest amount of wine at that time, and I don't think anybody has ever equaled that in proportion. How can I know? Why do I say that? Because when they started building a new city, which is Knidos, that you have visited at the tip of the peninsula, it's not an easy job, you know. Now we have the technology, we have the money, but still it is very, very difficult to sort of start a new city like that, with that size. That meant they had enough of money, political power, and labor. Yes. And they did it in a very short while. And that means that all depended on, again, exportation of wine and vinegar. So this peninsula was probably covered with wine grapes. And when you think about it, it can't be just one type. I know that it is at least 2, but my guess is there must be 4 or 5 different types. So when people started moving to the new city, the old city wasn't abandoned at all, but it's slowly changed into what? Probably the biggest industrial area in the world at that time. This is 4th and 3rd centuries BC.
Of wine?
No.
Just...
Guess what?
Amphora. Yeah.
That's it, pots and pottery. I mean, you need the packaging for that amount, and initially it was amphorea, but then they also started producing, other sorts of ceramics. If you look at the sort of old terminology, Gökova Körfezi, Gökova Bay, which is the other side now, used to be called Gulf of Ceramics. So it's not surprising at all. 25% of world's ceramics was produced here. It's incredible number. I didn't believe. I checked with several archaeologists. Seems to be true. And for example, in Pompeii, there was these erotic painted pottery. They were all from Knidos. Amazing story.
So Knidos actually was built on wine money.
Exactly. And the amounts they produce and sold, not only wine, vinegar as well, is incredible. Because you can find amphorea in Tunisia, in Algeria, in Morocco, in Crimea. So they were exporting to everywhere, really. The amounts are really incredible. And then Roman army became institutional client of Knidos, buying vinegar to sanitize water. And don't forget, Europeans didn't know how to make wine until end of 2nd century BC, because they had the grapes, but they didn't have the knowledge. Then the emperor ordered to sort of plant wine grapes in surrounding every garrison of Roman army, and that's how it spread in Europe. So winemaking is a very, very new thing in Europe. Okay, now French and Italian and Spanish, or especially French, think this is that grape and that. No, it's not. It's the other thing. The oldest winery that we know is in Georgia. That is 6,500 BC. But the genetic research shows that the wine grapes in Georgia didn't spread at all. It stayed there.
Right, we talked about this as well.
It went as far as north of Black Sea and northeast of Turkey, and remained there.
Do you think it's because they were not part of ancient Greek, like ancient Greece?
Mostly because it wasn't part of the immigration route, I would say. I mean, the new, latest 2023 genetic research shows that. It's also very interesting. Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is the yeast that we make bread and beer and also wine, and Vitis vinifera, the first cultivation area of these, and also wheat, is west of Syria, north of Lebanon, and southeastern Turkey. From there, Vitis vinifera, the second crossing, the hybrid, happens in central Anatolia, and then is spread to the whole world. So it has got a history of about 11,000 years. The story is very interesting. I mean, the first man-made ecological disaster also happened here, because when they started terracing, on the other side, in the Rhodian soil near Bosburun, they went too far with the terracing, and with the rains, everything sort of was lost, and for about 100 years they really suffered around Bosburun, and probably some of the population also moved to Knidos as well. It's a very sad story, actually, how Turkish wine industry sort of collapsed. It's not just wine industry, it's Turkish, or let's say Anatolian agriculture collapsed in 2 years.
In 2 years?
In 2 years, yes. Now, Ottoman Empire. Let's go back to beginning of 20th century. So Ottoman Empire is having difficult days. That's the end of the empire days. And human race has a very, very ugly, let's say, habit, and it's not very old. It's called nationalism. If you look at the real figures now in present day, on average, I'm just rounding the numbers, Italy, France and Spain are producing more or less 5 billion liters of wine a year. Some years it's 4.5, the other year 5.2, whatever. But on average, let's say 5 billion. That is the present figure. If you go back 100 years, the amounts or the figures are much, much, much smaller. But Ottoman Empire in 1913 or 1914 exported 356 million liters of wine. This means Ottoman Empire at that time produced at least 1.5 billion liters, which is, you can't rival it. It's the most. And what happened then? How come now we are producing something like 65 million to 70 million liters, which is uncomparable to even to Greece, America, South Africa, Australia. These are all, about 1 billion liters. And a country 120 years ago producing something like 1 billion to 1.5 billion liters, which is the, world leader must have been. How come it got to this point? The answer is very simple. Who was producing the wine grapes, or who was doing the agriculture in Turkey? It's not just the wine. Look at olive oil figures or wheat figures, anything. Go and check the statistics. All those people, let's say, they're boasting about, the republic doing this and that. But when you look at the agricultural numbers, agricultural statistics, it's a disaster. Why? Because it was done by the, let's call, minorities. Actually, they weren't minorities. They were people of these lands. In 1913, Turkish politicians talking about the exchange of people, but it's not exchange. This is way before the First World War. The exchange happened after the Independence War. They just told the Greek people to leave. In 2 weeks, the coastal Aegean was emptied. And if you look at the figures, 73% of the population were Greek. So in 2 weeks they had to leave. And in 1915 there was another story with the Armenians. Somehow Armenians left or vanished, and Turkish agriculture collapsed. Together with that, Turkish wine industry stopped. So it's got nothing to do with Islam or being this or that country. It is just a result of nationalistic politics, nothing else. And still now, we have probably more than 3,000 different types of grapes in this country, and nobody can match that. Italy has about 1,600 because Italy was kind of a gate to Europe for wine grapes or Vitis vinifera. If you go to France or Spain, the number is much less. And with 3,000 different types of grapes, you do what? Nothing. Most of it started after 2000s, let's say. Papazkarası, for example, in the Thrace area, it was there, but then somehow with the European wine or European grape types, varietals becoming popular, it was almost forgotten. But after 2000s, some people started with papaz karası, and let's say the new producers in each area. For example, if you're a producer in Çanakkale or in Knidos is Bozcaada, there are new producers there, so they tend to sort of find the local grape wine and produce wine with it, Karalahna, and coming down Foça karası, and then in the southern coast Pat karası, Acı kara, in central Anatolia Acı kara. These are, Merzifon karası. These are all new, old grapes being revived. Here, when I first came to Datça, which is 1996, I used to have long walks, and one day I'm walking. It was September, and I'm smelling vinegar on top of the mountain, and this is crazy, a very sharp vinegar. So just smelled and found the grapes.
Really? That's
And
so crazy.
yeah, and that is a very good quality vinegar. Everything happens on the plant. You do nothing, just press it and get your vinegar. It turns into vinegar on the grape, and you can still find it. And if you want to see the plant itself, go to Mesudiye. There's a cafe there called Pepper, perhaps the name has changed, in Hayitbükü. In front of the shop there you can find the plant itself. Also at the hill just facing that area you can find that type as well. I believe there had been at least 4 or 5 different types of Vitis vinifera that was used for producing wine in the area. I planted, if you look at those electric wires, beyond there is our recultivation area. I planted in the beginning 4 different types, but then I realized how difficult it is to sort of recultivate something, and then focused on just this one, because I started already late and my knowledge about agriculture and whatever is very, very limited. It was all new for me. The good thing, I knew lots of organic chemistry, I was good in it, and molecular biology and biology and microbiology, so that helped a lot. Otherwise it would be really impossible to sort of do all that work and come up with this kind of wine in that short while. So then just focused on one, and some of the plants over there had been grafted perhaps 10 times each year. Cut them, regraft them, cut them, regraft them, cut them, regraft them, that kind of a business.
A lot of patience.
And well, I mean, I was very sort of, the motivation was there. I love this peninsula. Unfortunately now it has changed a lot, but when I first came here it was unique, especially the place where I lived. I lived in Mesudiye. It was such a beauty. I mean, no concrete, everything natural, the wind, the climate was excellent. And it's really exciting that there was, this land had been really like a beehive at one point of the history, industry there, agriculture there, commerce and art and everything. I find it very boring. Not only Turkey, but entire world. Let's say in 12th century, the British invaded France and border area, and they saw the potential and started wine trade. And that's why most people on the globe now know about Bordeaux wines. Otherwise, I don't think Bordeaux wine is a good wine at all. In my opinion, okay, I wouldn't say it's rubbish, but close to rubbish. I prefer other parts of France, perhaps Burgundy. They have really nice wines in Burgundy. But this is basically what people think about wine, and the perception of wine is a result of perception management. You know, some people with money, they go into tasting wine and this and that, and it became an aristocratic or noble activity at one stage, and now the people who have the money have access, in quotation, to good wines, they believe. So to sell, especially French wine, they had started the whole thing. They have these competitions. So each year, thousands of wines enter the competitions, paying something between 500 to 1,000 euros per wine. So if you enter the competition with 4 wines, you pay 4,000 euros. As a result, let's say you have 1,000 competitors or 1,000 wines, 700 or 800 of these wines get something, a gold medal or silver medal or bronze medal or whatever special medal. The idea is increasing the wine prices. And then this wine tasting or wine degustation practices, again aiming to sell, you know, typical known brands. Some wine connoisseur comes up, may it be Robert Parker or whatever, and writes an article about this wine or that wine. The prices of that wine go up. Like it happened to Barolo or Brunello. And okay, for example, I really liked Brunello, let's say 15 years ago. 10 years ago, I still liked it, but the prices were sort of out of my range. And now I'd say 70 to 80% of the Brunellos I've been trying are boring, not even good. So it's all part of the commercial thing. And most of the wine consumers, the real consumers, the people in Europe or in Turkey, don't give a shit about this wine tasting thing. They just go and discover their own good wine. In Europe, they're lucky. Why? Because there is something called house wine. And the best wines I had in my life, and believe me, I've been trying wines from all around the world. I was lucky because my sister is a partner here, my partner, and all of the ambassadors and embassies, she's friendly with in Ankara. So I kind of order wines from New Zealand, Australia, Lebanon, Jordan, name it. So it comes to me and I taste it. And I had the opportunity of tasting Romain Conti as well, that we are talking about an 18,000 pound bottle. And I had the opportunity to taste Petrus as well. I wouldn't pay more than 20 euros for that wine. I'm not joking. I'm really serious. And the best wines I ever had was one in Barcelona. He was selling the wine, he was charging 1.2 euros per glass, and it was a full glass, so the bottle would be 5 euros. But he sold me the bottle for 10 euros. We both laughed. And the other two were again house wines in Italy. So if you're really interested in wine in a loving way, you can find good wine everywhere. In Turkey, in the rural areas, people produce their own wine and drink that wine. This wine tasting thing, as I said, I find it very, very boring, and I think it's a kind of assault in a way to my knowledge of neurophysiology. Imagine a jury on a competition tasting 70, 80 wines a day. There is a book called Neuroenology. That's a neurologist. Probably he was so angry with these practices and he wrote a book, how we taste wine, how we perceive it, how it happens, and how we store it in the brain, kind of thing. Imagine you're at the airport and you're trying perfumes. You try one and the second one doesn't work. And all these guys sniffing and counting the aromas, and if you know the chemistry of it, sometimes they go into extremes that I know very well that cannot exist in the same wine. The esters and salts and certain chemicals, and it can't happen. But these guys are, they're experts and they know everything. So that part is very boring, and I find it very sad.
Do you have a lot of communication with other wine makers?
In the beginning, I was visiting them when I started official production, but after a while I lost interest, because if you want to market your wine, if you want to make money from this, you have to follow that route.
Nice.
You have to be part of that commercial chain. You have to invite people and then, I don't know, arrange or organize parties and things for wine tasting, and endure all the snobbish thing. I can't do it. Just go and drink your wine. You like it, you like it. If you don't like it, just don't drink it. And what is all this stupid game? I don't like it really. So yes, I still know some of the producers, but I will be totally out of this business soon, because it's really hard without doing that kind of, or playing the rule, playing the game with its rules is not my thing. I came up with a project. I like design. I designed the vineyard, the winery, the tables and everything. And now it's complete, because it's really very difficult to make better wines than these. And winemaking, by the way, they really exaggerate it. You depend on the grape. If you have a good grape, you end up with a good wine. If you don't have a good grape, whatever you do, it doesn't work. So it's not magic what's happening there. I can teach anybody, a secondary school kid can learn how to do it. It's simple. If you know chemistry and if you know microbiology, it really helps. You can do unusual things, like the wine you're going to try next, perhaps. But other than that, a simple thing. There's a very small story in Turkey. One of the sultans, Sultan Murat IV, he banished alcohol and tobacco. That is 17th century, I think, or 16th century. And one day he was out for inspection in Manisa area. He's traveling, and all of a sudden, while passing a vineyard, people sort of picking grapes. And the Sultan goes angry. What are they doing? So find me the owner. And they bring the owner. The owner is Bektashi. He can explain you what Bektashi is later on. And he says, what are you doing? My Sultan, we're just picking the grapes. And what are you going to do with them? He said, we're going to put them in the pots, and that's all. And then it's not it's God's job. We don't interfere. That is winemaking in a very, very short way. It's just a hinge. That's my own feeling. And when I first came here in '96, one thing was interesting. The women in this area was kind of free compared to rest of Anatolia. And then looking back to history, if you look at the Greek world, I mean, the Westerners sort of love it, you know, the Greek philosophy and this and Greek poetry. That's the kind of beginning of Western civilization. But the reality is the women were totally excluded. They weren't even citizens, right? And all that poetry, philosophy, it's the philosophy of, it's a very macho philosophy and one-sided. But this peninsula probably was, in a way, as I said, this is my feeling, because Knidos had been the city that accepted a nude statue of Aphrodite. And that was the first time a goddess was sort of totally, no, almost totally nude. And no other Greek city had the courage to sort of accept it. That is one thing. And then again, all these festivities around Demeter and shows that there had been a very, very, well, compared to other sort of Greek cities, women had been, in a way, freer in Knidos. That is one thing. And if you go around Greek cities, it is really hard to find a sort of Dionysus temple right in the center of the city. Okay, for example, in Pergamon there is one, but that is just annexed to the theater. In my opinion, theater itself is like a temple, because in the very beginning, theaters were places where they had festivities of Dionysus. Theatron means the place to look. Theatron and the root thea, dea, God, they come from the same root. So wine, women, and Dionysus, these are, you know, important things about the city, I mean Knidos, that makes it different from the other Greek cities.